the ACS Learning Center. In this tutorial, we're going to be covering Service the Laundry Dispenser, the Knight AutoFlow Pro. First, we do a visual inspection by walking up to the dispenser. First, we want to check just to make sure that we have power on. Take a look at your remote. Make sure that there's no scrambled letters or numbers on the remote. Check your connections to your pumps. Are there any breaks or leaks or chemical buildups? Same thing for your flush manifold. Check your product containers. Are the pickup lines in the right containers? Do we have any spills, leaks, or any of the containers empty? What we're looking for in the visual inspection is there anything that jumps out on us that requires immediate attention? Next, we're going to check the squeeze tubes, faceplates, and rollers. Remove the faceplates. You're checking to see if there's any breaks or cracks. Remove your squeeze tubes. Check to see if they're soft, if they're pliable. Look at your rollers. Are there any breaks? Do they look intact and operating correctly? Let's use some tube lube to add to the squeeze tubes. Always use a silicone-based tube lube. All is required is about a 1/2 inch bead in two places that's between the squeeze tube and the rollers. We continue down the line and check each pump. Check the faceplates, check your squeeze tubes, and check your rollers. Again, we're checking the integrity of the squeeze tube, and we're checking where the squeeze tube comes in contact with the rollers. This is the part that's going to wear out on you. Lube the inside of the tube up next to the rollers. Here in pump 3, we find that the squeeze tube is hard and firm. We need to replace this tube. In removing it, push down on the top of the quick connect. This loosens up the connection to remove your squeeze tube. Go ahead and replace it with a fresh squeeze tube. Again, line up your connection on the pump body. Slide your squeeze tube in place over the rollers. When connecting your lines, the discharge side will always go to the right. Your pickup side will always go to the left. It's easy to get these backwards. Lubing the tube increases the lifespan of your squeeze tubes. Always to lube your tubes. Alright, we found a squeeze tube here that's just slightly worn, but it is still pliable. So it has some wear on it, but it is still in good shape to use. Let's go ahead and put it back in place, and again we're going to lube the tube to help increase some of that life expectancy in that squeeze tube. Remember, face plates hold no pressure back, it's just a cover. Next, let's test the check valves. Again, check valves doesn't wear out quickly. When check valves break, they generally get stuck in an open position, but not always. You want to remove the tubes from the squeeze tubes, plus your flush. Test to see if you have any water coming out. Again, safety first. Don't stand straight in front of a check valve when you're testing the flush. Here we find a check valve that is stuck open and water is coming out. Here we have a bad check valve. Let's go ahead and remove our tubing from the check valve. And let's remove this check valve and replace it. Here you want to make sure that you got a rag nearby. Depending on how your flush line is ran, you can have a backflow of water from your flush line coming back out of the manifold. In getting your check valve ready, use Teflon tape. Put it on in a clockwise direction or in the direction of the threads. All is required is 3 wraps of Teflon. Check valves have a tapered threads. When we're replacing the check valve back into the manifold, all we're doing is putting it hand snug. Remember, it has tapered threads. Use your tool, add another 1/4 to a 1/2 inch turn. It's all it's required. Go ahead and put your tube back in, and then let's test the flush again. Let's make sure there's no leaks coming through the check valve or around your threads. Once we've completed the manifold, let's go back down to our product containers. Here we're looking for our chemical labels to make sure they're in place. Our pickup lines are in good shape. How much product do we have left in the containers? If you have labels that are worn or broke, let's go ahead and replace it while we're servicing the dispenser. Labels on the pickup lines helps the customers to ensure they put the pickup lines back into the right containers. If you're using tie wraps, make sure you cut off the ends of the tie wraps. Let's don't make them look like a porcupine. Again, we continue on by checking our connections, checking our products. Here we find our sour is just about empty. Let's go ahead and replace this bucket for the customer. Put the fresh container in place. Go ahead and move over your pickup line. Always make sure that the main cap is loose for the customer. And in this case, let's go ahead and marry up the 2 buckets. Next, let's prime the pumps using a circuit board. Here we're checking for the operation, we're checking the sound, and we're checking the speed. Are our pumps working correctly? Make sure that we go through and we test each pump. Pumps over time will wear out. If we're priming up or testing an oxidizer, that is a distainer or brightener, make sure that you always flush the manifold. Here again, we're testing and priming up our sour. And whether it's a sour or sour soft, again, always flush to the line when you finish priming that pump. Don't allow an oxidizer and sour to mix in the same manifold. Let's do this again, but let's use the remote to prime our pumps. Press and hold the remote for 3 to 5 seconds. It's going to ask you prime pumps. Hit the up arrow button. Use the up and down arrow button to change pump numbers. Press the enter button to start the pump. Press the enter button to stop it. Let's go ahead and change to pump 2. Again, enter button starts the pumps, and the enter button will stop it. Continue with this till you've primed and tested each of the pumps that's on the line. Anytime you are priming or flushing an oxidizer, distainer, or brightener, make sure that you flush in between. When using a remote, pump 9 is your flush pump. In this setup, let's go ahead and test our last pump. Again, anytime you are running a sour or sour soft, flush the line out. On the remote, use pump 9 for your flush pump. Enter starts, enter stops. When you're finished priming, hit the enter button to exit out of priming. For more information on servicing a laundry dispenser, talk to your SSM, manager, regional manager, or contact the training center for more information.